What's going on, Sharks? This is the Raikaze here. Today we're going to be covering my team, in which I did in fact use at the Baltimore Regional Championships, which I did make day 2. Let's hop in. This past weekend was the very first official tournament held for the Pokemon 2025 World Championship Series. This first tournament was held under the Regulation H format, which meant we cannot use any of the Paradox Pokemon, any of the regular legendary Pokemon, as well as any of the big bad restricted legendary Pokemon as well. So therefore you can only use the Pokemon you can get in the standard gameplay, plus the Hisuian Pokemon, as well as the DLC. So with that being said, we all had to come up with a lot of different strategies and combinations to see how we could actually participate in these tournaments and see who can actually come out on top. There was a lot of different Pokemon that were coming out, and we were able to see people using awesome strategies, which was a really great experience. However, there were some Pokemon that were quite notable that we knew were going to actually basically outshine some of the others, and they definitely did, and one of which actually won this tournament. So what I would like for us to do is to go through some of these teams, to actually just talk about them, see what we can actually even do on our current team, because we did in fact make day 2, but we actually were running into quite a few challenges as well. So we'll go ahead and talk about my run as well, and see what we can actually anticipate for the next regional championship, which is going to be held next month in Louisville, Kentucky. So of course, if you do in fact like this type of content, be sure that you are leaving a like, sharing, subscribing, and make sure to have those notifications turned on, because we are going to start hitting up on these videos on the Card Shark Dojo website. And be sure to follow me on my personal YouTube page at Raikaze11, where we also do Pokemon content, like our Pokemon VGC Roulette, where we actually choose a Pokemon at random to where we have to use in the VGC format. We also do like little skits and things of the sort to just have a great time over there. So make sure you are in fact following me over there, as well as on all my social pages as well at Raikaze11. So that's all going to be the same. So make sure you do in fact follow us on all the websites, and make sure you have those notifications turned on so you don't miss a beat. So with that being said, let's go ahead and cover this tournament. Make sure you are looking into Labmouse, so that's LABMAUS, like for mousehold.net. With that site, you'll be able to see all the Pokemon that are currently being used in the current format. It is constantly updated. It's actually doing things a lot better than Pikalytics, in my opinion. And it is automatically covering all of the latest tournaments, whether it be official tournaments or even the unofficial tournaments. So that is where you can see how the metagame is in fact evolving, and see how you want to probably evolve along with it. So make sure you are utilizing that resource if you are in fact wanting to go into the Pokemon Regional Championships, and if you want to really compete seriously and see what you're going to be potentially going up against. So let's go ahead, and first I want us to look at the team that I was using. So this was my team here. It was the Archaludon, which is a standard assault vest. Mine was using the Electroshock Snarl, which was actually different from some that were using the Flash Cannon, but I had switched out to Snarl for quite a bit of time ago, because it was really helping me out with going against Goldengo, because I've noticed that the Goldengos were using their Shadow Balls. It was still being able to overwhelm my Archaludon even with the Assault Vest. That thing was just breaking through my Assault Vest. So I ended up switching over to Snarl. That would force the terrestrialization onto the Goldengo, then will allow me to then utilize my Body Press if need be. We also still have the Dragon Pulse, and obviously, as I said, the Dragon Pulse there. Our Pelipper, which is standard because we want to go ahead and use the Pelipper to set the rain for the Electroshots on the Archaludon. My Pelipper was one that had the Cover Cloak, so it could not get faked out. It ran the terrestrialization of ground. That way, if the Goldengo was going to be coming in using the Thunderbolt, which I actually did not run into, which was actually kind of interesting, but we did actually have instances where we're going against the Electabuzz using their Electro Webs and things of the sort, because I did in fact get rid of my Wide Guard, which kind of hurt me, actually. And we'll get into that here in a little bit here. But ours is using the Weather Ball, Hurricane, Tailwind, Protect. But the Terra Ground was something that was actually very specific for mine. I kind of wish that I did not use the Protect any longer, and I did switch back over to the Wide Guard. But like I said, we'll go into that here in just a moment. Dragapult, it is going to be our choice band set. It is running the Dragon Darts, Phantom Force, U-Turn, and Outrage. Using that Outrage with that choice band, it definitely does a ton of damage. Plus, if you actually use the terrestrialization on top of that, being Terra Dragon, this thing will hit like a truck on steroids. So that is an awesome Pokemon to use, but there is a counter to that, which we'll also go into here in just a moment. We also ran another dragon on the team. So this is a triple dragon team, and this is our Kommo-o, using the throat spray. So we decided to go with the overcoat ability because that will help us to avoid the rage powders in case I was going to need to focus down on specific Pokemon without using a spread move, because our clanging scales was in fact spread move damage, and of course our Clangorous Soul, that was going to boost our stats, but it was have to sacrifice some health. But if we use the clanging scales, then we can actually do spread damage. However, if there's a fairy type on the field, I have the opportunity to go into a terrestrialization into the steel type and run Flash Cannon there. So that is also why I did not even need to worry about having my Archaludon running the Flash Cannon, because my Kommo-o actually had the Flash Cannon there. And I also ran the Aura Sphere because especially whenever the Kommo-o does in fact have its throat spray plus its Clangorous Soul, so it's going to be a +2 on the special attack. If it runs that Aura Sphere, it will one-shot an Archaludon. So that is a huge advantage that the Kommo-o has. So definitely something to look out for in the future. So we will go into more of that here in a moment. We also had our Rillaboom. Our Rillaboom was a Terra Fire, Grassy Surge, holding the Miracle Seed to just do extra damage, using the U-Turn, Grassy Glide, Wood Hammer, as well as Fake Out. So Fake Out to just try to allow additional Pokemon to do their setups. That's going to be like our Kommo-o, or if we needed to do a swap to just set like Weather or something like that, or if our Dragapult was going to be doing some massive damage, then we can actually disrupt the opponent rather, if they're going to, let's say, try to go for like a Follow Me or something like that. That is where the Rillaboom would come in handy in terms of that. Then of course we got the Maushold. So the Maushold, I was running with this Maushold for the longest time. I've told you all many times in the past that Maushold is an awesome Pokemon. I've ran sets before where you can actually check on the previous videos when I was testing it out, even using it with the red card. But that was back in like, I think, Regulation C or something of the sort. But you can go back and check that video out. Now, Maushold is definitely a fun Pokemon to be using. Using the Population Bomb, I mean, this thing definitely adds up that damage. But I definitely use this Pokemon mostly to use the Population Bomb into my Archaludon to boost my defense all the way up to maximum on the first turn, or whether the first turn that they're both on the field. Now, I have run into these scary situations where my Population Bomb was in fact only hitting like one time in this past tournament. So it was rare and it was scary, but I mean, it just happened. It is what it is. But you know, it's still fun to use. The taunt was very important, especially if Pokemon were going to try to go for Spore, or if they're going for other setup or things of that nature. We can actually use a non-Prankster taunt and actually shut down those setup moves. Follow Me, of course, to redirect certain attacks against it, especially if a Pokemon is going to be using a fighting move to go after the Archaludon, especially if it's a special attack or something of the sort. I can Terrestrialize into a Ghost type and then redirect that fighting attack towards ourselves, and we will not be able to be hit. So that is an excellent combination of the two. And Protect to just maintain our Friend Guard ability as well. So that is going to provide the additional longevity for the team and things of the sort. Now, in utilizing my team, one thing I want to go ahead and start with is some of the success as well as some of the struggles in which this team has. Now, one thing that is a great success is the amount of offensive damage that this team can in fact put out. With having the Dragapult doing the offense, really putting on that pressure, it cannot be intimidated, it cannot get faked out. This is actually something that is super important in terms of that, to where the opponent really has to consider what we're actually going to do. Whether or not if I could potentially even switch out, or if I'm going to redirect some of their moves away from me, from certain targets if they're trying to, let's say if they want to go ahead and take out the Dragapult, for example. And what if the Mousehold is just simply just going to use Follow Me and they are unable to get the Dragapult off the field, or we have the Rillaboom that can actually run the fake out, just allowing other Pokemon to set up. So they had really good synergy, and I did in fact like that. As I was debating, as I was creating this team, at one point I was running something similar to the winning team as well. I never actually ran the Amoonguss, which part of me kind of kept thinking maybe I need something that was going to give me even additional longevity, because for example the Rillaboom creates the grassy terrain that is designed to, number one, disrupt side spam users, because those guys, they really just get in the way of this team. When I was practicing on ladder on Pokemon Showdown, I ended up not really running into a lot of side spam. So that is what prompted me to removing the Wide Guard off of my Pelipper and switching it over to Protect. However, I have in fact learned that the tournaments is what truly creates the setup for Pokemon Showdown, not the reverse. So as I changed that Protect into the spot of the Wide Guard, my very first matchup was a side spam user, and that just really threw me off. And especially with the Gallades, those things hit so hard that even Pelipper is trying to get to it, but then by that point we are running into like, hey, can we even go for our Hurricane, or are we about to get, sunned out and then they're going to use Expanding Force and take us out before we're able to even to do anything? So that's where it runs into a bit of a trouble there without having the Protect. Now without having the Wide Guard and with us running the Protect. The other thing with the grassy terrain is that it's supposed to help continue to boost the recovery on the Archaludon. That is something that was very important for me, so I can continue to regain health as time's going on, just to make this Pokemon even less likely to go down. However, I was running into the aspect where, like Golden Go doing its Shadow Balls continuously, especially if it's Choice Specs, it's just still able to run through the Archaludon over time. So it just puts on the additional pressure. So having something like an Amoonguss with the Pollen Puff, or even a Sinistra, that might be something that would really help support the Archaludon even more. So this team itself, as I look back on it, is something that is designed to have multiple offensive opportunities, to where it really gets in the head of my opponents, to where they're saying, okay, who's coming in to do which type of setup. But the problem with that is that there's not enough support in a sense. So the Pokemon team needs to have not too much support, but it still needs a little bit more support than what it actually does have. The other thing was the Dragapult. Running into teams that were facing against the Clefables. That Pokemon utilizing the Follow Me aspect, and if I am already stuck in like Dragon Darts, for example, then it can use Follow Me. It pulls all the Dragon Darts towards itself, and of course it's immune to it, so the Dragon Darts is just going to fail. Being Choice Banded, I can't change my moves, and then Dragapult just becomes a sitting duck at that particular point. So that's another thing where it's very important to get the opponent's pieces that can actually shut you down off of the field, so you can actually run the different strategies that you would like to do. A few things that were actually going on throughout my run. I mean, I've had opponents to where they were getting just sudden critical hits at points, and I was like, it's part of Pokemon, and I was, let's see, I went X1, then I was 1-1, then I was 1-2, and at that point I was like, oh, this is just going to be a really bad tournament. Then I became 2-2, 3-2, 4-2, and I was like, well, if I make 4-2, I'll just go ahead and finish out the rest of the tournament. And then I made 5-2 and 6-2, and then I made it into day 2. So I was like, oh wow! So that was an extreme surprise, but I would really prefer to go more so like maybe X1, or preferably XO, but to go into day 2 to have a little bit more wiggle room to try to make it closer towards top cut. But that's something that I'm going to continue to work on for my future teams. So you never know what your opponents are going to bring, and the metagame is going to constantly be developing. One thing that I did experience, for example, one of the things that one of my opponents did, it was one of the Tang individuals, but they were running the King Gambit plus Sneasler on the team at the same time, facing down my Mousehold, and it was one of my other Pokemon. I'm trying to remember which one it was. It was probably my Dragapult, but at that point I was like, oh no, Dragapult cannot stay on the field, so let me go ahead and swap out to one of my other Pokemon. And I said, okay, this time I won't actually run a follow me. I went for the population bomb to try to get rid of the Sneasler, and I was hoping that they were going to just try to get rid of the partner that I just swapped out. My opponent had just completely figured me out, and I give him complete kudos because he terrestrialized his King Gambit into full-on Terra Dark, went for the Sucker Punch. My Mousehold still survived, and his Sneasler still used close combat onto my Mousehold. So had I terrestrialized into the Ghost type, then they were going to one-shot me with their Sucker Punch. Had I not terrestrialized, which is what I didn't do, I didn't terrestrialize, then they double focused into my Mousehold. So they had me completely pinned from the get-go, and I just looked up at him and I said, you just made the awesome play, dude. That was phenomenal. And I give kudos to my opponents that make calls like that. That is just superb, and I just give them all the credit. I mean, that was amazing. And that's where you just learn and just see how sometimes how your opponents are thinking, and it's really good to just experience that. So enough about that. That was the team that I ran. We made day 2, so it was a good run. There are a few changes that I am going to be making to my team. Then there's even also the tournament is coming up online. It's going to be a completely different team as well for that. So more to come for that, and we'll see some videos about that here in the nearby future. So let's go ahead and start covering some of the other teams here. So of course, at first, we're going to start covering the winning team. So the winning team was by Nicholas Morales, and he also ran the Mousehold Archaludon team. So running, of course, with the Pelipper, but his team was going to be a little bit different than mine, and that's because he was running the Incineroar, so that was his starter as opposed to having the Rillaboom, but his grass type was the Amoonguss, not the Rillaboom, and he was running the Basculegion. Now, his Basculegion, actually, let's see, was it Choice Band? No, his was actually the Mystic Water. I was running a Basculegion, spoiler alert, with Citrus Berry, but that might be something to actually look into, is running it with the Mystic Water instead, as opposed to even worrying about doing some type of thing with like Life Orb or anything. Don't want to do any more damage onto the Basculegion. I want to make sure I can preserve its health as much as possible. And just make sure they can survive certain attacks and just keep on doing that damage, because it's already doing enough damage with the Wave Crash and taking some recoil, so I don't want to overdo it too much with that. But the Pelipper setting the rain, doing the Swift Swim, that is just phenomenal. One thing that I do wonder about is what teams that Nicholas had to go up against, and I wonder if he actually faced any Sun teams. So these are the teams that Nicholas had to face against. Look at all these wins. Dude's doing amazing. All right, so he won against Span. That's the male Ndidi plus the Delphox. So Delphox is actually doing quite a bit of damage there. We had a loss against a Brambleghast. Oh, I didn't even realize anybody was using. Oh, there's a couple Brambleghasts actually going on here. This is the exact, slightly different teams. Who the heck is different? Okay, Primarina versus the what is this Pokemon called? Glamora. Primarina versus the Glamora. But they're both special attackers. But that's interesting. But these are very similar teams, and he was able to adjust and win against Matthew as opposed to his loss against Cage, maybe. Rain Team. We also got probably Unaware. So, as you can see, though, on this team, or rather on his matchups, he did not go against any Sun teams. I'm not sure if this Whimsicott had Sunny Day or not, but most of the teams he was going against had Rain or, the Clefable or, P2 or something like that. Some Trick Rooms and things like that. But nothing that was specifically Sun to shut down his Rain. And that's something that's extremely important to note, that sometimes you create a team and you start to doubt yourself because you start facing off against certain opponents, and then you're like, oh crap, I really don't have an answer for this Pokemon. You try so hard to compensate or make up for that disadvantage, and when you do that, then you start losing your synergy, and then you start losing against other teams. No team is perfect. That is the thing. But it is important that you do know what is going to be super common, see how the metagame is developing, and make your call. Because at that particular point, you can go to a tournament and what you are suspecting that you are going to be super weak against, you may not even run into it. My team, for example, is typically weak against Unaware Dondozo. And I know that was actually a very dangerous thing to accept in this current format, but I actually faced one Dondozo team, and that was at the very end, but there was a lot of things that happened at the very end on day 2 with team sheet error and then doing a game loss and all this different type of stuff. So it wasn't even something that I could really even say was an official loss in that regard. But with that being said, don't worry about necessarily always changing your team to try to face off against everything. You just want to change your team to just say, hey, what is my most synergy? How can I just capitalize on what I want to do? And then you see what your opponent's trying to do and see who can get through to their strategy first and or shut down the other opponent before they can do their strategy, and then work your way from there. So that's my only word of advice in terms of that. So we'll go ahead and continue looking at Nicholas's team. So yeah, we got the Rain here, the Terra Water on the Amoonguss. So we got the Spore, Rage Power, Pollen Puff, and the Clear Smog is going to be super important, because typically when you have an Amoonguss going against a Archaludon will typically have to terrasilize so it's not put to sleep, and then once it actually does in fact terrasilize, you can use Clear Smog and get rid of its stat boost, because it's typically going to be maximized defense. So Amoonguss, as long as you do not Terra, you can be not very effective and soak up that damage, and if you can get that Clear Smog off, you will be successful in resetting the stats on the Archaludon. So that's extremely important to note, how to counter an Archaludon using an Amoonguss. Incineroar, which is an awesome pick, because even though there's a lot of rain out there, it still can use the Intimidate to drop the attack on a lot of opposing Pokemon. It also runs the Parting Shot to drop their physical and special attacks, because we have a lot of special attackers. Fake Out for the additional support, like the Rillaboom that I had would do, so it can actually disrupt your opponent while you actually do your setup. And then you also have the Knockoff, which is what I really love, is the Knockoff. Knockoff is so clutch, especially for all the Goldangos. Goldango is superbly a stressful Pokemon right now, and if you use a knockoff, you can either one-shot it and or just simply mess up its stats completely because you're just taking off its item that it was relying on to do all the damage that it was doing. So that's extremely important there. Let's look at our next team. We got Paul Chua, who's running a Dragonite, King Gambit, Alolan Ninetales, Incineroar again, Amoonguss, and Garchomp. Ooh, the Garchomp. So let's see. We got the Dragonite, which is a multi-scale Dragonite, holding Lumberry, so it can't be put to sleep. Well, for one turn, it'll wake itself right back up, or it also cannot get burned. One thing that I'm seeing here is that the King Gambit is the one that has the Assault Vest this time, as opposed to any, it's opposed to like the Incineroar or something like that. But one thing I'm definitely seeing is the Alolan Ninetales does not run the Aurora Veil. Even though this team does not have any alternate weathers, it still is not running the Aurora Veil, but it does have the Encore, which is super important for if your opponent's actually running that Protect and or other type of setup move. And then if you can still outspeed it, then you can actually say, hey, boom, you're going to be stuck inside of that move this entire time, and I'm going to keep doing it through the end of the game and make sure that you will be having a very bad time while I get ready to take you out. So that's super clutch and awesome for the Alolan Ninetales there. We got the safety goggles on the Incineroar, another Terra Ghost. A lot of them are starting to run Terra Ghost, what I'm seeing here. We got another Clear Smog and Terra Water, okay, and a Terra Steel Life Orb Garchomp. So that Pokemon will be able to do a good bit of damage because it's having the Life Orb. Stomping Tantrum, if you're going against a Pokemon team that is running the Rillaboom, more than likely, so you won't have to worry about using Earthquake because that damage is actually going to be reduced on the grassy terrain. But using the Stomping Tantrum, can you make it focused attack? You got the Dragon Claw and the Protect. One thing that I am noticing though about this is that you're not running a Rock Slide on this team. So I'm used to Garchomp's running Rock Slide, and you're probably trying to take out a Talonflame or something like that. So I think it's interesting that you're not really stressed about these flyers. You're just going to just say, okay, no, I'm just going to do Dragon Claw and my ground moves, and just basically go for stab, and just do as much damage as possible. And of course, with having this Life Orb and everything, and you're taking this chip damage, you do have the ability for the Amoonguss to do Pollen Puff and continue to restore your health. So that is super important, that Amoonguss is super clutch on a lot of these teams to do that Pollen Puff and restore your health. So I think that's actually extremely important to take note of. Yeah, so I think that's about it on this team here. Who do we have after this? Third place we have Dawe. I'm so sorry if I'm messing up your name, but Dawe C, or Dawe Say. But anywho, we got the P2. So on the P2 format, we got the so we got the Goldango using the Choice Specs. So there it is. Choice Specs item, this thing's doing massive damage. If it decides that it wants to trap you into certain moves, it can go for the trick as well, get you stuck in a special move. So that will be very important, like if you were running, for example, a General Ursaluna. But, of course, you typically will use Protect before on that previous turn or something of the sort. So they won't be able to take away your burn, and then you can run your Earthquakes or something like that at that particular point. We got the Shadow Ball, Power Gem, and Make It Rain. So pretty standard. Power Gem is actually pretty cool, so you're not even worried about using Thunderbolt. You can use Power Gem and just do the same thing against like Pelipper and or even a Talonflame. Porygon 2, this one is actually running a Terra Ghost, which I find that kind of slightly concerning actually for the Terra Ghost, because usually knockoff is a thing to do against the P2s, and if you go into a Terra Ghost, I feel as though that can actually set it up for destruction. Yes, you'll do a ton of damage with that Shadow Ball, but I guess it just depends on the situation. Obviously, they made it in third place, so obviously they know what they're doing. So I won't say anything that's negative about that. I'd just be afraid of it myself. I know there is a thing about the Terra fighting Porygon 2s that is actually climbing up, so that might be a thing that they can actually switch over to. If you want to run the Terra Blast on that, because you'll get stab on the Terra Blast even without terrestrializing, and then if you do terrestrialize, you can still maintain the stab, or you just stick with the Tri-Attacks because that has a chance for burn, paralysis, or freeze. We have the safety goggles. Well, that's interesting. So safety goggles annihilate, so it's not running the leftovers. Rage Fist, Protect, Bulk Up, Drain Punch, so that's the standard moveset. It's just that it's not going to be leftovers. So that's very important to note. We do have screens here with the Grimmsnarl to just keep boosting up the defense on the Annihilate, so you don't really have to stress about doing Protect and leftover recovery, because they're doing half the damage than what would be typically expected. So that's actually pretty good. But I mean, that's very interesting. It is very interesting to see this type of set on a Annihilate standard moveset, but the item is just very different. But I think that's very clutch, because the Amoonguss usually tries to offset the Annihilate, and this way it can actually avoid that. So that's actually really good. Then we also have the Ursaluna. Now, Ursaluna is just Ursaluna. This thing is freaking just awesome. This Pokemon is just awesome. I mean, yeah. I love the Terra Fairy. If you all remember, that is what I've actually ran on my very first Ursaluna. It was Terra Fairy. I never ran Headlong Rush, though. I used to run like Facade, Earthquake, and Drain Punch at the time. But the Headlong Rush, I think, is super important because it can one-shot a Archelodon before it gets the defense boost, and sometimes even with a couple defense boosts before if it terrestrializes or something like that. So definitely something to look into if you have not tried an Ursaluna as of right now. So definitely an awesome Pokemon to have. And then even with that Terra Fairy, if you're using a fighting attack against it, it can actually resist that damage, and then you are good to go. So definitely a awesome Pokemon there. Plus with the screens to actually boost your defense, that's perfect. A couple more here just because of with our timing and things of the sort. So let's just see what else we got here. So Toller Web. So yeah, this is a team that I definitely wanted to cover because it is running the Flamigo. So Flamigo. I actually had no idea that this Pokemon got Wide Guard. I think I did know that, but it's not something that's so common. I still keep forgetting to look up this Pokemon stats because it's just the Brave Bird, the close combat. It does massive damage, but I don't even remember like what its actual stat breakdown is. So that's something I will actually review after this video here, just to see how well I can probably put this type of Pokemon to use, because Wide Guard, Protect, Close Combat, Brave Bird, I mean, this thing is freaking amazing. Scrappy ability, so it can use its fighting attacks against the Ghost type as well. I was thinking about the Hisui and Decidueye, but if this type of Scrappy happens on a faster Pokemon like this, if it's, because I'm pretty sure it's much faster, then this might be the way to go. So definitely something to look into here. We got, of course, the Ursaluna, but this one's Terra Normal, so it's just going straight damage on that Facade. And there we go. There's the Porygon 2 with the Terra type of fighting. Terra Blast, so it can either be stabbed without terrestrializing or stabbed with terrestrializing. We got the Ice Beam, Recover, Trick Room. So one thing that's important to note about these Terra fighting Porygon 2s is that it covers for so much. You got the dark types that are actually like the King Gambit. you got the Tyrannotars, if you got that special attack boost, you can just boom, one shot them. Your Chaladons, they are going down. If they terrestrialize into an ice type, then you into a grass type, I'm sorry, then you got the Ice Beam that can then take it out. I mean, this Pokemon does so much damage. You would think that you need the Porygon Z, but in fact you can do Porygon 2 and you will do massive damage. So do not sleep on this Pokemon. It is amazing, it is scary, and I was watching it starting to climb up on the ladder on Pokemon Showdown, and I was like, oh, this Pokemon is hurting my team. And I said, there's nothing I can do at this moment in time. I'm going to have to just move on. And I'm glad I did not go against any of them. So that was lucky for me, but I definitely is something I want to make sure I'm covering for in the nearby future. We got the Mental Herb Amoonguss. That's one thing I was afraid of, because my Mousehold was using like taunt against the Amoonguss, Amoonguy, whatever. But nonetheless, all of the ones that I went against, they were just standard like Citrus Berry or things like that. But if you go against the Mental Herb, then you are running the risk that you are still going to be put to sleep on that first turn. So if having that opportunity to shake off a taunt or something of that sort definitely is scary. This one's actually even more offensive. Instead of running the Clear Smog, it's going straight on for the Sludge Bomb, so that is actually quite dangerous as well. But the thing about doing Sludge Bomb is that you can poison your opponent, and if you poison them, then you cannot spore them. So be very careful about that. But yeah. But like I said, guys, you want to go ahead and come on over to LabMaus, so labmaus.net. Make sure you are going to utilize this site so you can see what the previous tournaments, what people were running on them. You can even see unofficial tournaments and things of that sort. Make sure you check out Moxie Boosted channel, because he actually ran a complete video with the developer of LabMaus to show you how to fully utilize this website. I definitely recommend it. I'm going to even go back and rewatch it as well, so I can make sure I'm going to utilize it even more and in a more effective way. So make sure you are in fact utilizing this website, taking a look at seeing what the metagame is developing into, what you want to actually create, what type of combinations are being run, and so you can be prepared for that. Don't be a sleeper on the Sneaslers, because Sneaslers are climbing up there, the P2s with the Terra Fighting, as well as I'd say the Goldengos. And the Goldengos, and of course Dondozo, because that Pokemon's always going to be there. So be on the lookout for those. The winner of the regional was Nicholas. Congrats to him. And we have the Mousehold that was the star of the show with that population bomb, because that does rack up the damage. So make sure you are keeping your eye out for how the metagame is changing to adapt for these Pokemon, and see how you are going to face against them if you're going to the next regional. But with that being said, make sure that you are in fact subscribed here at the Card Shark Dojo, as well as on the Raikazi 11 site. And of course, make sure you have those notifications turned on so you don't miss a beat when these new videos come out. And be sure that you are going to be there for one of these future tournaments. I would love to meet you all in person, and just to say, hey, let's continue to grow this community and let's actually strive for higher grounds. But with that being said, at this moment in time, this is going to be the Raikazi signing off. You all know what to do. You stay strong. You power on. Let me catch y'all later.